What were recording sessions like then? I mean, did all the performers and musicians have to be there at the same time?
Yeah.
And what happened? I know when you made mistakes, I guess they had to be scrapped. There was no really way to save anything, was there?
No. In those days, those recording days, if it was a jazz session, the nature of the jazz in those days, the bebop of those days, you had a 16 or a 32 or a 24 or 32, a 64 bar line, and then it was free form, which was predetermined, like you take half, I'll
Right.
take 8, you trade 4, then we go back to the half and we're out. The only part that was rehearsed or notated would be the theme line that the ensemble would play
Right.
at the beginning and at the conclusion.
Sure.
And everything else was impromptu.
It was all improvised.
It was all improvised. Now, the musicians in those days, if they played together in clubs, had the lines all memorized. If it was a put-together band with a bunch of soloists to appear, they had to be capable of reading the music, and they'd run it through 2 or 3 times to make sure there was no notitis on the charts.
Right.
To make sure everybody was on the right page, that they knew when to turn the page, and then so forth and so on. And those were the control type sessions where the theme was controlled, but the free form, the jazz still was permissible, as opposed to blues. But the thing is, all of those recording sessions were precisely 3 hours long. They were all contracted by the union, and you had to pay extra if you went beyond 3 hours or if you accumulated more than 15 minutes worth of music. And the scale in those days was $31.75 for a 3-hour session.
Did the musicians also get scale for doubling on other instruments, or I guess that didn't really happen, did it?
That came after the 1948 strike, when they changed the tariff rate and the assessment and doubles and so forth and so on. Yeah.
Now, were most of the sessions instrumental sessions at that point in time, or were there a good deal of vocal sessions where people were writing songs on the set and so on and so forth?
No. All the sessions in these days, at this time, in the late 40s going into the 50s, if there were vocals involved, the A&R man for the company that the artist was signed to had ferreted out 1 or 2 songs that were tailored to this particular artist, be it male or female. And they sat down in an office with an accompanist and said, this is the best key to do it in, and this is that, and I want strings, and I want this, and so forth. And they would predetermine and then schedule a 3-hour session with either 3 or 4 songs prepared, and whether it was with strings for the first hour and a half and with the brass, or ensemble all together, one thing and another, but the 3-hour session was sculptured to get the most music for the least amount of money.
Oh, of course.
And this is, you know, like I'm talking Gordon Jenkins, Axel Stortl, those kind of arrangers, Neil Hefti. And your singer would have to be prepared and sing live, because we didn't have facilities for overdubbing in those days. You were doing everything by the seat of your trouser. Everybody had to know what the hey they were doing and when to do it.
No fix it in the mix, I guess.
No, we couldn't save it in the mix, and that was it.
Well, Tom, we're going to move along now to the 1950s, and I think you mentioned earlier that approximately 1949, tape recorders moved into the recording industry, at least in professional facilities. And I noticed that by that time you were definitely hooked on record making, and that had shaped your career, and you were going to do that. But on the other hand, you also had a desire to lead a normal life, so to speak, whatever that might be. And you had for a time worked for the U.S. Information Service. I'm unfamiliar with what that is. Maybe you could fill us in on that a bit.
State Department. Our United States State Department has the USIA underneath it, which is the United States Information Agency, which is responsible for Radio Marti, the Voice of America, and the dissemination of information in all of the legations that we have in the world. Wherever there's an ambassador or a delegate from the United States representing the United States in a foreign country, there is a United States Information Agency officer present to assist the people who don't know about the United States with information and get them books, papers, recordings, whatever it is they want. And for the people who are traveling that are citizens, come in and say, how do I get from here to here in Afghanistan, or how do I get from here to that? The USIA, United States Information Service.
You mentioned the Voice of America, and I see that you've also were associated with them. Were you working in a recording capacity with these
I'm going to drop
agencies,
some
or?
names. It was hysterical. There were the Unholy Four during 1951, 2, 3. We went through the Joe McCarthy hearings. Telly Savalas represented the Mideast desks. He's passed away now.
Yes.
But he worked there. That was his means of support while he was doing theater and going to acting school. Werner Klemperer, Colonel Hogan's Klink, he worked there and head of the Austro-German desk. A chap named Cal Roberts, who's retired now, who's the vice president in charge of recording for Columbia Records for umpty years, worked there. And I was the fourth one. And the four of us were the rebels. I mean, we were just notorious. Obviously, Werner and Telly, because of their multilingualism, were writing scripts, doing acting, doing the newscasting in different dialects and so forth and so on. Cal and I were working in the recording section. All of us aspired to be, you know, in some ambassadorship role in some foreign country and retire there, you know. It didn't happen, but that's what we all aspired to while we were doing this, but we got tired and we quit.